my dear friend, Dr. Manjir Samanta-Laughton, who she and I were on the radio today. And she's a global speaker and the author of Punk Science and The Genius Groove, both of which are very good reads. So, 2012. Let me pass you over now to Manjir.
Hi, and thank you so much for inviting me here tonight as well. So, I don't know what you're going to make of all this, but so I was lucky enough to go to the Mayan Calendar 2012 conference in 2010, and it was actually held in Mexico, in the area where the Mayans used to live. And all of the top people from around the world gathered to do talks on this topic of what's going to happen in 2012, including Jose Arguelles, who, as you probably know, is one of the people who put about this idea, first popularised this idea that the Mayan calendar is going to end in 2012 and what that could mean. And so I was really excited, thinking, well, you know, we're going to go and we're going to see exactly what 2012 is all about. And we had Graham Hancock and, as I said, Jose Arguelles, and we actually had the director of Chichen Itza, sorry, his name has gone from my mind, but all the top people. And so we sat there through this conference, and guess what? None of them agreed. None of them agreed, and they also actually, you know, they didn't agree with each other, and they didn't say anything specific, really, about what they felt was going to happen in this year. Including the guy that was the director of Chichen Itza, who has been there for 12 years, who's trained with a shaman as well as having this very prestigious job. And speaking to the Mayan people rounded about, and whilst we were there, we had a bit of a holiday as well. This is my partner James, we were there together. And so we had a bit of a holiday, and you know, so I was speaking to people like, you know, I went and I think I got a manicure at one point, and just speaking to people round and about, and it was very clear that the identity has been lost to the Mayan people, and whatever knowledge and wisdom that they had has become mixed up with Catholicism that their identity is definitely more Catholic than it is to do with their ancient heritage. So for various reasons, I think, you know, speaking to a lot of the Mayan people, a lot of them are sort of got amnesia about their past, which is very unfortunate. But what that means is there's no real agreement. There was no real agreement at this conference as to what 2012 meant. So I've got my own thoughts, which I might share with you, if that's okay. And so Olivia introduced me as an author and a speaker, and since I left even as I was in the medical profession, I started to study things like quantum physics, and started to look at the point as science and spirituality came together. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. If only we could blend this together. Maybe we could even get doctors to understand about things like higher dimensions and healing, and maybe we could put this to some use. I was working as a physician, and I thought, fantastic, let's bring this all together, and maybe we can actually do some good with this. I was also trained as a bioenergy therapist. I don't know if you know, it's similar to Reiki. Has anybody heard of Reiki? Yeah. Yeah, so it's similar to Reiki, and I was getting great results, and I thought, wouldn't it be great if we use this in the NHS? So I thought one of the barriers to this, by the way, I'd had a Kundalini awakening when I was still in med school in London, so that's how I started to sort of have parallel lives, one in medicine, one in exploring all the spiritual side of things. So I started on my quest to really bring everything together, and I studied with people like Peter Russell and Amit Goswami and you know, Bruce Lipton and all these amazing people, and travelled to America a number of times to really go to their lectures. And so started to say, well, you know, maybe I've got to write a book, make it really simple so even doctors can understand, and like actually bring it to, because they like things, they don't understand physics. A lot of doctors do not have any knowledge of quantum theory, string theory, all of these things. And I thought, wouldn't that be wonderful? Now, what I didn't expect is that I was going to come up with my own theory. And that was on cosmology and black holes. And to bring a long story short, I had a massive insight and started to realise that black holes, which we only had started to look at with our telescopes, we're not so black after all, that they're actually the created points of the universe. And what happens at our black hole is actually not destruction, but creation. Infinite light comes through a black hole, the light spirals through the dimensions, it comes to the edge of our reality, which is the edge of our perception and consciousness, and it splits into a particle of matter and a particle of antimatter. Now the particle of matter goes on to make our world, and sorry it's a bit difficult without all the diagrams and everything, and the particle of antimatter goes into something called a mirror universe. Now, what's interesting about this, and the particle of matter is what we are living in. We are living in the matter world. What's interesting about that is we are actually living in a forward timeline. But we also have this mirror universe, and in that mirror universe, we have this backwards timeline. So the actual opposite of what happens is our universe is happening in that mirror universe as well. That's the universe of antimatter. And when the two combine again, you actually get infinite light. So that's beyond the speed of light. I don't know if anybody saw recently, but physicists have realised that particles can go faster than the speed of light. So I was suddenly like, oh my goodness, you have a forward timeline, you have a backward timeline, actually there is no time. So actually you have no time, you have time, and you have negative time at the same time. So suddenly I realised, well, that's how relativity gets solved, because Einstein said there is no time. You know, and the spiritual people say time, there is the eternal now. And yet they get very annoyed if you don't turn up on time for their seminar. You know, so it's like, how can you solve this paradox? And I know physicists were looking for this all the time. There is a timeline, but it's below the speed of light. But that's not the only dimension that we have. There are many dimensions beyond that. And there is the dimension of the eternal now. But the way that we live is, for all intents and purposes, we have a timeline. Now what's interesting is the Mayan calendar speaks about 2012 being the end of time. Not the end of the world, the end of time. Suddenly I discovered, out of the blue, this new theory, and if you want to have a look at all the references that I've put into my book Punk Science, it goes from quantum theory, string theory, I studied all these aspects and how quantum physics fits in with black hole, because Heisenberg not only discovered the uncertainty principle, he also said that the universe, the uncertainty principle, is based on his initial ideas that the universe is actually in black holes, fractal black holes with infinity at the centre. And he thought he'd got it wrong. So he actually modified his equations so that it didn't look like that. But actually he was right all along. That's what the universe is made up of, black holes at every single level. So my book has all got all the references. If you want to have a look at all this, I spent several years checking that this science was correct. So what you have then is you've got this timeline. And what the Mayans say is that 2012, if you believe that date at the end of this year, is going to be the end of this timeline. I don't think that's the end of the world. I think, just as Ted was saying, this is when we go. And time itself is also this spiral black hole going through these different cycles. And what I think is happening is we are starting to get to the point where the dimensions, they were there at the golden age. You in this room, you probably know all about the different cycles and the ages, the golden age and the iron age and the bronze age and all the different cycles we go through. We're going from a golden age and we're going all the way through, right through to a golden age again. I think this is when, at the end of 2012 represents the end of the timeline where we are in this linear modality. And I think what the idea of 2012 is about is when we leave behind just linear living and the veils start to get thin again and more people start to pass through the veils and have multi-dimensional consciousness. So we came from the age of the gods, where the gods were visible to us, that all these beings are still there. And more people are having angelic experiences, they're channeling, they're doing all these things, they're having visions. And where has that gone? Well, they've not gone, it's just that we've moved away from it. The dimensions have separated, and what we're headed towards is where time is no longer so linear, and it becomes more of a multi-dimensional space that we are in. So the very fabric of space-time, I think, is changing. And so that's what I think 2012 is representing.